Leah, welcome to the show.
I am thrilled to be here. Hi, listeners. I'm Leah, and as Elle said, I get the privilege of leading the benefits product marketing team here at Gusto.
Yay! Okay, so on that note, tell us a little bit more about Gusto for some of our listeners who may be new to the company.
Yeah, you bet. All right, so Gusto is a platform that helps over 400,000 small businesses by simplifying payroll, benefits, and HR. So Gusto is a very mission-driven company, and we are all united through our shared passion for SMBs. Small businesses are so central to the fabric of our economy, and they're integral in our communities. And Gusto exists to help take work off of their plates with an intuitive and stress-free platform. And we just really focus on freeing up their time so that they can focus on their passion that got them into starting their business in the first place.
Awesome. Yeah, my mom was a small business owner, so I feel like I grew up with that lifestyle. And Gusto specifically, I was a longtime fan. I remember years ago seeing an ad somewhere, probably LinkedIn, and I just felt like from a B2B content perspective, it was so fresh and so compelling and such a fun brand. So I'm really excited to dig into our content today. So the first segment of our show starts with a case study. And this case study is in particular of how you and your team led a successful cross-sell program at Gusto. So can you tell us a little bit more about what was happening at Gusto when you realized this was something that had to be a priority?
Yeah, you bet. So some customers at Gusto adopt the full platform, payroll, benefits, and HR from the jump right when they join. But for many others, they start using Gusto when they're quite small. So they join us for payroll. And then as they grow, they encounter new challenges with running their business. And those are challenges that oftentimes Gusto can help solve for them. These are things like being able to offer easy to use, affordable benefits to their hardworking team as they hire more team members on to run their growing business. So we think about the customer journey and know when they are likely to need additional products through a customer readiness score. And we have a growing number of customers that we could see would really get a lot of value by providing benefits, employee benefits to their employees, but had not yet started doing so. And at the same time, we were looking to create more scalable marketing motions and supplement some of our kind of more manual one-off campaigns with automated campaigns that would send at the moment in time that a customer was exhibiting interest or a need for a particular product. So I needed to figure out what were all of those moments, what were the key triggers in the customer journey that we could use as a signal for their readiness to offer health insurance. And then I worked with a really highly cross-functional team to identify and size out those audience, instrument the triggers, create all the content for these campaigns, and then build them out. So we had a really big brainstorm and we narrowed in on 5 key triggers. And then we built out those campaigns to cross-sell health insurance into our existing customer base. We launched this campaign and we started monitoring results. We knew it was going to take a little while for the data to bake, just given that it generally takes a customer between 1 to 3 months to purchase health insurance. It's a huge investment for a small business. And so we really needed to give those businesses time to kind of mature through that sales cycle. And we saw great results. So after that time period, we established that we hit nearly a 20% lift in lead creation for the treatment group. The treatment group was those that received that automated triggered nurture series versus the holdout group that didn't get any automated emails at all. So that was a huge moment for us to get that 20% lift.
Awesome. Wow. So something you said here that really stands out to me, and I want to unpack it a little bit with you. So you talked about using a customer readiness score to time that cross-selling motion. And, I think that's such a perfect example of a customer-centric strategy, which is so vital to who we are as PMMs, right? Personally, I have not been exposed to a ton of cross-selling campaigns. Most of what I have seen in my career has been around selling solutions or bundles, maybe at the same time of a particular product. So I'm curious, in your experience, is that like a different segment of customers, like in terms of selling for the right time to cross-sell, like versus selling a solution all at the same time? Like where does the readiness come into play there?
Yeah, it's a great question because we look at their readiness score, which of course these algorithms, they're always evolving and they're learning and they're never perfect, but they're getting better every day. And we have really fabulous scientists that think about this problem all the time. And so we use that to signal to us that yes, the customer is ready. And then we can layer other things on top of it. We can layer on moments in time throughout the year that they're most likely to buy. We can layer on hand raising signals that maybe aren't as emphasized in the customer readiness algorithm and score, but that we know signify that, like, yes, this customer is raising their hand, they are expressing interest. So I would say, yeah, we do view that as kind of a key entry criteria to say, hey, if your customer readiness score isn't above a certain threshold, we're not going to try to cross sell you that product because there's probably a different solution out there that's part of our solution set that's a better fit for you at this moment in time. So maybe you're not ready yet to offer health insurance, but maybe it's the best moment in time for us to offer you something like business insurance. You've just hired that first employee, and so you need workers' comp to be compliant with your state mandates for the first time. So yeah, we really do look at that as a threshold barrier. We want customers to get across to know that, yes, this is going to be a great fit product for them.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So what I want to do now is in your brief synopsis of kind of what we're going to get into today, maybe let's break that down for our PMM listeners out there who they're in the midst of trying to figure out this whole cross-selling strategy and maybe feeling a little lost and are getting inspired by your story. So you mentioned a number of different activities that you led throughout that entire process, kind of starting with this customer readiness. So talk to us a little bit more about like step 1, step 2, step 3, and I guess like just kicking it off with step 1. Let's explore that first step that a PMM would have to take. Tell us more about how we'd get started.
Yeah, you bet. So one of the first things that we did was looking at what are those key triggers. And so we got probably about 15 different cross-functional stakeholders in a room together. So these are product managers, these are sales people, these are operations people, these are data scientists. These are people that in one capacity or another work with these customers or their data on a daily basis and know a lot about these customers, but each of us bring a really different lens and perspective to it. And so we find that getting that highly diverse cross-functional stakeholder group is key to getting that full customer journey and getting kind of those deep insights from all the different angles. And that group brainstormed what could all the triggers really be that would indicate that it's the right moment in time for that customer. And then we layered that on top of things that we already know about our customers. Pain that they're experiencing as they grow, hiring new employees, trying to retain that top talent in, sometimes a competitive job market, just depending on the industry and the geography.
Got it. Okay. So part of identifying that customer readiness is figuring out the signals or triggers, I guess, that customer was experiencing. And can you repeat, I think you might have said it, but what were the triggers again that you looked at in particular for your customers? Just to give our listeners some examples of what that could look like.
Yeah, you bet. So we evaluated a ton of them, and I won't go into all of them, but some of the ones that I'll just highlight to give you a sense of what we did is, for example, when they added a certain number or above employee threshold. We know that growth is one of the key triggers to a small business considering offering health insurance. Maybe for the first time, they're hiring an employee that doesn't get coverage through their spouse. And so for them to be able to hire that critical talent, they need to be able to offer a competitive benefits package that's going to recruit that top talent. Or maybe they've started offering other benefits like retirement benefits, a 401k, but they have not yet started offering health insurance. And we know from our customer data that from an employee perspective, employees express that the most important benefit that an employer can offer them is health benefits. But even though we know that at Gusto, because we have over 400,000 small business customers and millions of payroll employees that we're able to serve through our platform, the average small business might not have access to that data. They might not know that. And so that's part of the campaign, really surfacing those key insights that we're able to extend into our customer base to allow them to make better, more data-driven decisions on behalf of their business.
Ooh, I love that. So I want to come back to that in a minute, but real quick, let me recap what I've heard you say so far. So step 1, we have the customer readiness that a PMM would try to identify for their own strategy of cross-sell. And maybe step 2 would be trying to identify those triggers within their ideal customer profile, I'll say. So then what would they do next?
Yeah, great question. So next, what we do is we use a RICE prioritization model. So reach, impact, confidence, and effort. We are looking at reach, the number of customers that we could reach through creating this trigger, how many customers would qualify for that trigger on an annual basis. The impact, if we believe that this is a particularly impactful moment of time to market this product to the customer. Confidence, do we have quite a bit of data to suggest that, like, yes, this is a compelling trigger? Have we done things like this in the past that have worked out well for the customer? And effort, is it going to be a larger lift for us for some reason to create this trigger versus another? And so based on that, and we have, like I said, really fabulous data scientists that we get to work with. And so they sized all of that out, because I'd say one of the most impactful things that we could consider is the overall reach that we could have within that customer base. So based on that, we were able to narrow those, 20, 25 different ideas we had down to the 5 most impactful on behalf of the customer base.
Yeah. And is that the reason why you would want to, why sizing matters? Is it to narrow it down? Is it to try to seek stakeholder alignment? Is it to, justify the investment? Like, can you talk through some of the reasons why doing this audience sizing exercise matters so much?
Yeah, you nailed so many of the key things. We all know that one of the biggest constraints that we have, of course, is time. And so when we invest time, we want to make sure that we're investing it wisely. And so by being able to understand the audience sizes, we make sure that we're prioritizing the work that drives the key metrics that the company is looking to drive. And we have great cross-functional partners that if we do not properly prioritize the right campaigns, they're going to ask us very hard questions about why these aren't being sized and prioritized properly. And so we want to make sure that we have good answers for our cross-functional partners, and they feel really bought into the work, because this project required work from at least probably 7 or 8 different teams. And so we want everyone to feel really bought into this initiative and that we're all rowing in the same direction. We're all in this together. And then finally, because by sizing this out, we're really able to impact the lives of more customers, and more customers that have more employees. It's not easy to navigate the health benefits landscape in the United States. We hear from small businesses all the time that they wish they had a more guided and opinionated partner that could help them through this. And we believe that Gusto's solution is easy to use and does provide just so much value to those small businesses, taking that work off of their plates, simplifying the entire process, and getting health benefits to the people they love most.
Yeah, I liked your comment, or reflection on being inclusive of all the customers that would benefit from what you have to offer. So doing the sizing exercise can make sure that you are doing just that. Okay, so we did the customer readiness. We identified our customer triggers. We did the audience sizing. What do I do next as I'm pursuing this cross-sell strategy?
Yeah, so at this point, it goes into a bit of a parallel path. From a marketing perspective, we're going to go off and we're going to build the messaging framework, all the content for the emails, and we're going to send our growth, our engineering, product, and design teams and data scientists off to create the audience triggers in our CDP, our customer data platform. And that is going to then feed into Marketo, our email platform, to enable us to send out those emails. So they're going to go off and do that. Meanwhile, product marketing, we are developing our messaging framework. And as I was saying, it's just such a huge moment of pride for a small business when they can finally afford to offer health insurance for their teams. These are lifelong friends and family members that they are working with. And so it makes it quite meaningful and personal when they're able to afford to do that for the first time. Their cash flow is in a place where they can finally make this dream that they've had probably since they started their business a reality. And so we do lots of message testing, and we start with all the content that we've put out over the last year that we've seen really resonate and drive really positive results. And that becomes kind of the base of the content. We then look at each individual trigger and what's the context in which that email is going to be going out into, and how do we make sure that the messaging is highly relevant to what the customer is experiencing at that moment in time. So we know, for example, that when an employer is adding employees and crossing a certain employee threshold, that's a strong indicator that they might be interested in offering benefits. They're growing their team, and maybe they're having recruitment challenges. And that could be because they're not offering benefits. And so we can speak to that pain and how we can help solve that for them. And we also know, for example, that when the average business hires someone where the salary is greater than $60,000 per year, offering health insurance actually has a positive return on investment because it just reduces that worker attrition. And so that's something that we can also highlight to our customers. They might not know that offering benefits after $60K salary is positive ROI. And so that's just amazing insight that we can extend into our customer base.
You mentioned that, and I wanted to come back to this, offering those pieces of insights to your customers, and that's something that they crave. Leah, you're such a strong advocate for your customer. I can tell that you truly empathize with them and you've taken time to know who they are really well. It shows. That's awesome. So getting back to our cross-sell, step-by-step process, you mentioned two parallel work streams. You've got product marketing, hunkering down on the messaging and message testing and building out the content. Can you speak a little bit more about that parallel work stream that's going on at the same time?
Yeah, sure. We try to get to market as quickly as possible once we've decided to invest in something. And so we're always looking for efficiency gains and making sure that we're not just having one step occur after another. We're trying to make sure that they happen simultaneously. And so we have the data scientists working with the engineers to figure out how to instrument these different audiences within Twilio. Meanwhile, marketing is building out a batch campaign, because what we're going to do with that batch campaign is we're going to validate that this is a high performing quote unquote trigger for us. We're going to simulate that this is an automated triggered email by sending it to the people that would have qualified for that trigger during a particular time period, and validating that we've got the content right, that the open rates are high, that the click-through rates are where we want to see them. And also during this time, we established that we wanted to do a 50% holdout. This was quite critical because we have an incredibly high bar for performance at Gusto. And so our KRs for the year are always very high. And there's always a certain degree of anxiety that comes with figuring out, are we going to hit our KRs? We're going to damn well try to make that happen. That's a big deal when you have 50% of your audience that could qualify for an email that will help them get this product. And we're going to hold them back. We're actually not going to send this campaign, because what's important for us is we understand the incremental impact that we're able to drive through these initiatives. There's huge amounts of time that teams are investing in this. And so it's very important for us to understand really what is that incremental impact that we could drive. We also established this time that we were going to do a 50% holdout to be able to establish that baseline.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So talk a little bit more about, and you mentioned some of this, right? Like why you do that 50% holdout, but can you say a little bit more around why that matters? Like as a PMM, why should I incorporate that into my, cross-sell program planning?
Yeah, absolutely. It matters because that one debate that we often have at Gusto is like, when you do something like a marketing campaign, you can see the performance results of, yes, the open rate, yes, the click-through rate, but how do you know that your campaign motivated a customer to do something that they wouldn't have done otherwise? And so this is why the holdout is quite important. What we did with this holdout is we only held them out from the triggered campaign emails. They were going to get all the other in-app messaging that they otherwise might have gotten. Everything else about their experience remained the same. And so when we look at the performance, we can very easily say, oh, hey, if our holdout group performed differently than our treatment group, we know that the treatment actually drove incremental impact for the business. And that's things that can be celebrated in our performance reviews. That's, part of what gets marketing funding at the end of the day, when we're being able to say, hey, we're driving business results that really matter.
I was about to say that that's something that you can take with you to strategy conversations internally, getting it back to your OKRs. It's quite clever. I've never seen that before. Not that I haven't worked too closely with these type of campaigns before as a product marketer. And what I have been exposed to, I haven't seen anything like that before. So it's quite clever. Such a helpful tip for our listeners. Okay, so let's recap again. We've got the customer readiness score, making sure that we have the target market right. And then we have the triggers, identifying the triggers for our target market and our customers. We have sizing the audience. And then step 4, you kind of have two parallel work streams. You got the message testing, you're creating the content and validating, assessing incremental impact. I guess bring us home. Like what happens now? You're launched, like we're ready to go. We've got validation. We've got the 50% holdout that you mentioned. What happens next?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things I should also mention when it comes to creating the content that Elle, I know that you are also very passionate about is using social
Yeah.
proof and stats in our emails. And so we thought that this was quite central to the strategy, is making sure that our customers could see themselves in the emails, and that when we were talking about the positive changes that this product can bring in these people's lives, they weren't hearing it from Gusto. They were hearing it from people in their peer group. They were hearing it from people who had just figured out how to offer benefits for the first time and the transformational impact that it made for their business. And so we made sure to really incorporate that into each of the emails, whether it was a link to a case study, whether it was a pull quote, or whether it was a third-party accolade, an award that we had won. We really made sure to embed that in each of the content. The other thing that we know from having talked to customers and just having tested into this over time is the importance of providing customers multiple CTA options in a nurture series. Some customers, they're self-serve first customers. They're very comfortable with the technology. They are, this is maybe they're not their first time offering benefits overall. Maybe they've offered them at the different company that they were a payroll admin for. It's only their first time offering benefits at this particular business. And so they're ready to self-serve. They're ready to dive right in. There might be another customer who has never offered benefits before. They are having trouble figuring out how to navigate the very complex employee benefits landscape. And so they want to talk to someone. They want to get on the phone with a licensed benefit advisor who can talk to them about the plans that are available in their area, how to make decisions between offering a bronze plan or a silver plan, and what might be a best fit for their business, their goals, and the employee base that they have. And then we have customers that are earlier on in their exploration. Maybe they don't want to self-serve yet. Maybe they don't want to talk to sales. They just want to learn more. They want to click through, they want to read more of a case study, or they want to read what's the difference between small group health insurance and a health reimbursement arrangement. And they're just looking to learn a little bit more. So throughout, we really do offer customers the opportunity to click into whatever type of content is best for where they are in their journey.
Yeah, meeting the customer where they are. We've also done that at Cisco before and so many other places that I've worked. We've heard very similar, not strategies necessarily, but just philosophy of how we communicate and engage with customers. Fantastic. So I just want to call out that this is so methodical, this entire process that you mentioned and have just talked us through. And I'm sure that was such a big factor in the success that you saw. So 2 questions. One, I think you mentioned it at the start of our conversation, but it's worth talking about again. Would love to hear the results that you saw through the cross-sell campaign. Again, I know you mentioned it already, but let's bring it back up. And then because this was such a methodical process, talk to us about the stakeholders who helped you achieve that amazing result that you saw.
So we knew that based on the audience sizing that we had done, it was going to take us a few months to get stat sig results. So at launch, we started monitoring the campaign performance indicators just to make sure that the send volumes were accurate and what we were anticipating. These were brand new triggers. We were pumping data from one system into another system that had never been collected or never been connected before. So just making sure that these systems were operating as expected was a big part of the QA process. And then looking at the open rates, the click-through rates, making sure that we were seeing in those automated campaigns what we were expecting to see based on the batch campaign performance. And then after about 4 months, we had enough volume of data to determine that the triggered email nurture program was performing, above expectation. When we looked at the holdout versus the performance of the treatment group, we were generating nearly 20% lift in new sales opportunities for our health insurance products among the recipients. So for those recipients that got the emails, we produced 20% more opportunities and leads for our sales team to follow up on than the folks that didn't get an email. And this is a pretty mature product. So to get a 20% lift on a product that's been around for roughly 10 years, we are not talking about a product that was launched, yesterday or last week. We're talking about a product that's been in market for 10 years. And of course,
a decade.
And the product team is amazing. And, they are always working to make improvements to that shopping flow and how it works on behalf of the employees that are accessing their benefits in Gusto. So it's not at all to say that product has been stagnant for 10 years, but still in the market, it's a fairly mature product. So to get a 20% lift in that is pretty incredible.
Awesome. And real quick, who are all the stakeholders who are involved in making this happen?
Yeah, great question. So we have got, at Gusto, we are organized into what we call apps. And you could think of apps as mini business units. And so we have a benefits application, and there are cross-functional teams, horizontal teams that have a dotted line reporting structure up through this app. We really want people to go deep on the app or product area they work in. And so this dotted line reporting structure, this matrix organization really does allow us to do that. We get the craft excellence of reporting up through a manager. At Gusto, we call them PEs. We don't have managers. We have people and so that's a fun fact about Gusto culture. So you get to report up through a people in power who really understands your craft, and you are still very accountable to the head of the business unit that you're doing your work on behalf of. And so because of that, we have a growth team that sits kind of like out of the app framework. That's just a growth team that helped us. And these are engineering, product design, and data scientists that help us figure out how to instrument these triggers, how to get the data passed from our CDP into our marketing platform. We've got then data scientists that work within the benefits app itself that are working with us to size these audiences, make sure that all the data is flowing correctly, because they are really experts on those audiences and that data set. We have got cross-functional marketing counterparts, life cycle marketers that we're working with on all the campaign operations, marketing ops people that are working within Marketo to make sure that everything is set up and instrumented correctly. And there's just a huge amount of highly technical work that has to go on there. And we've got great, very detailed cross-functional partners that help us with that. All the product managers that work within benefits, they are very interested in making sure that we're getting customers into the right applications, into the right flows, so that they can get a really easy to use benefits experience. Our legal and compliance counterparts that are fabulous.
Yeah, of course, always legal.
Making sure that we keep our business on the rails. I think those are the key people.
Yeah. All the usual folks, but I will call out your access to the growth team, I think you called it, like the data scientists, those who are building or maintaining that. Is that the team that does like the customer readiness scoring and that heavy analysis?
That actually all goes through our benefits data scientists.
Oh, interesting.
And there's different ways that Gusto does it. So the growth team actually does it on behalf of other products that are less mature, but the benefits team is so mature that we are fortunate enough to have data science that are kind of dedicated to that.
That's so helpful. Yeah. As a PMM at a big organization, it never even occurred to me to look for such a team. So it's definitely something that I'm going to go check out for myselop.
Yes. Oh, and the last partner that I would be so remiss if I didn't mention, I mentioned them earlier, but our sales team. Of course, our sales team, we are opportunities over to our sales team. And so they are with us through the whole journey to make sure that we are contextualizing the customer's experience at that moment in time, that they are like excited about the high quality leads that we're going to be putting into their hands to help them navigate the benefits process. So sales is a great cross-functional partner for us too.
Yeah, great to get those high quality leads. Okay, last question for you on this topic. Any tips for PMMs who are pursuing or in the midst of a cross-sell campaign? Like what's one big takeaway that they should consider?
I would say the biggest thing to consider is that holdout. That holdout is just so key to being able to definitively say the incremental impact and the power of the campaign. So if I have one piece of advice for you, it's going to be that. And then the second piece, which you didn't ask me to offer a second piece, but I'm going to offer it anyways, which is a lesson that every PMM knows. It's just like, bring your stakeholders in early and often, get everyone rowing in the same direction, get everyone excited about the work that they're going to get to do together, and find like low lift ways to keep people abreast of the progress that you're making and the results that you're driving.
I like that. Yeah. And I bet that 50% holdout is such a great way to bring everyone together. You can tie it back to group goals and OKRs. So that's a really helpful tip. Okay, so with the close of the first segment, I'd love to move on to our next segment, the message critique. I love this segment so much because it's just really fun, both for us and for our listeners. So for listeners out there, I've asked Leah to bring a company who is messaging or product she really admires and to give us her take. But before we get started, let me just throw out the ground rules. So first, Leah, I want to hear something that you're loving about the messaging or the product, like what's working and what stands out to you. Second, what's something you wish the PMM would have done differently or considered to make the messaging clearer, more impactful? And then third, what are some ways that the PMM could take it to the next level or iterate, maybe pair it with a creative campaign or content or something like that to consider? So what company do you have for us today?
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about Segment by Twilio. As you can see from my last answer, CDP, customer data platform, is very top of mind. And so we've been looking at a variety of CDP providers, and yeah, that's what Twilio does, or Segment by Twilio.
Yeah, no. So just as the guest, obviously, having worked at Twilio, I'm familiar with Segment, but help our audience better understand, yes, their customer data platform, like who are they for and what do they do? And I guess like maybe talking through your own potential uses as a customer would be helpful.
Yeah, you bet. So Segment really does enable businesses to collect, unify, and activate their customer data that comes in from various sources. And that allows them to create comprehensive and real-time customer profiles. So by consolidating data from websites, mobile apps, other touch points, Segment helps organizations gain valuable insights into customer behavior and preferences, and then facilitating those personalized and effective engagement strategies from there.
Yeah, the biggest example I can think of from my time at Twilio was Domino's, like the pizza company. So Domino's, I remember, used a Segment, and they would unify customer data from all these different digital channels, and they brought it together in through the platform, and their marketers would be able to create these like hyper personalized marketing campaigns tailored to super distinct customer behaviors, which as a marketer I think is so fun and really exciting. So Leah, tell us, what about their messaging or their product, like what are you loving about it?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so if you go to segment.com, you will see that the headline and then what is underneath it says, the leading customer data platform powered by AI. Twilio Segment brings together clean, consented customer data for real-time insights so that you know each customer like they're your only customer. And that last bit is what sticks out to me. So you can know each individual like they are your only customer. It is written just so plainly and so cleanly, and that speaks to me. That is how I think us all as marketers really want to be messaging to our audiences.
Yes, it's certainly something to aspire to. And this is something that I even admire about even managers or leaders at big companies with big teams, people who can make you feel like they're listening to you, they're hearing you, your voice matters. I almost think, and I don't want to get too into our critique, but I almost feel like that bit that you pointed out, that they should bubble that up to a bigger headline because it does resonate so much. And if I was scanning this page, I might miss that. And that's a piece that as a marketer so resonates with me. But what about you? What do you think is kind of like, what are ways that are something you wish the PMMs would have done differently or a different take on the messaging?
Yeah, great question. Overall, I think the messaging is pretty spot on. Some of their key value props: enrich customer profiles, activate customer data, optimize ad spend, boost cross-sell and upsell, which is exactly what our episode is about. So all of that is like very much speaking to me. When I visit the page, one thing that I'm kind of craving and I wish for is there's lots of like imagery on the page, and a lot of the imagery feels very stock. I do not see my customers, and that maybe it's because I serve a small business audience, but all these just, I don't know, they're very square, they're very stock, they don't feel very emotive. And so I am very much wishing that the visuals were a bit more poppy and creative.
Yeah, I can see that. So for listeners, if you go to the segment.com page and you scroll down a little bit, they've kind of got these columns across the page that list out each of the messaging pillars, essentially, or the values that you'd get out of the product. And there's an opportunity, there's real estate on the page for impactful imagery. And I agree. I almost wonder, and I know they do have a carousel of customers at the bottom, but I almost wonder if they could do something like put in a customer example for each one of those. I'm sure there's endless opportunities for ways to do that, or even like product imagery. But that's also complex because you don't want to reveal too much before telling the product story or telling the narrative. So it's a tricky situation. It's certainly not straightforward or easy, but yeah, I hear you. It does feel a little stock.
I think that the product oftentimes people are interested in what the product looks like. And so they have done a really great job of creating these abstracted UI images that start to get at what does the product look like. But it's just like you're dipping your toe in the water. And so one of the things that I would love to see slightly more on this page is what does the UI actually look like? How am I going to be using this platform to drive, the key value props that you're marketing at me?
Yeah, I completely agree. And this has come up in other episodes on the podcast as well. I want to see what the product looks like. Anytime I don't see what the product looks like on a SaaS website, it makes me wonder either it's too complicated and you don't want to show it because it's going to scare me off because it's too complicated, or something about what you're showing isn't real. So either way, I realize sometimes it can be hard to show the product, but I agree. I think as PMM, as a marketer, and this being a product for marketers, or at least a subset of marketers, this is something I would want to see. So agreed. Okay, so how can they elevate it, take it to the next level?
Yeah, I think making some iterations on those visuals would be a great idea. Maybe it's something that they could test into, A/B test the page with what might it look like with some different visuals versus others. And because we are both very passionate about customer proof points, making sure that case studies and customer testimonials are part of it, I would love to see a little bit more of that. At the very bottom of the page, they have one case study that is linked. But I would love to see a little bit more of that customer voice represented on the page.
I totally agree. I personally am more interested in how are my peers using a certain tool and how are they winning with it. So I couldn't agree more on that. Okay, fantastic. Okay, that's the close of that segment. So Leah, before we go, I just want to make a note to say how grateful I am for having you on the podcast today. And I said it kind of at the start, you are so generous with your time and your skills in terms of mentoring others. So thank you so much for your willingness to come on and be a mentor to the PMM community in this capacity. And just as the gratitude moment, I would love to let you give a shout out to a PMM who has really shaped your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, Elle, thank you so much to you for not only having me on the podcast, but starting this podcast, Product Marketing Adventures. This is a first-time podcast that's really trying to bring practical advice into the community, which I love and I'm so passionate about. I am just so grateful for having had such an amazing PMM community I've had the privilege of getting to work with throughout my career and exposed to through, podcasts like this or sites like ShareBird. So I just love stuff like this. There have been so many pivotal people who have influenced my career, and I'm so grateful for a few people that are top of mind for me this week. Emily Ritter, who is the former head of PMM at Gusto. She originally hired me over 5 years ago, Gusto, and it's just a place that I loved getting to work. So I'm grateful for everything she saw in me 5 years ago. And Christina Dam, she is a new head of PMM we hired about 6 months ago, and she has just brought such incredible insights and leadership to the team at a moment of time where, wow, she is really helping us take the team to the next level. And so I'm grateful for her leadership every day. And finally, Q Chen, James Lee, Calvin Young, fellow PMMs that I've had the privilege of getting to work alongside at Gusto for many years now that are just great sounding boards and just make it fun to come to work.
I love that. Yeah. It's really special when you have a product marketing leader who has been with you for a long haul and not only has helped you grow within that one organization, but then as you get to be the PMM, bringing in a new leader and then having that new leader then come on and then pick up right where that old leader left off and then be able to shape the next few years. That's so amazing. So yay. Thank you, amazing PMMs. And my last question for you, Leah, is where can we access your expertise?
Yeah, you bet. Best places to find me are going to be LinkedIn and ShareBird. So Leah, that's Leah, and Brite, that's Brite. So a fun fact about my last name, my name before I was married, my last name was actually White, and my husband's last name was Bran. I like to do things that are unconventional and, might rock the boat. I'm always down for something a little bit spicy. And so when we got married, we actually combined our last names. So we could have gone with Juan, or we could have gone with Brite. Brite was the clear winner for us. So both my husband and I changed our last names when we got married.
That's amazing. I love that. So you've created a new family in so many ways, and everybody got the experience of changing your name,
Yeah,
which I can also attest is cumbersome to say the least.
it sure is.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much. And thank you to the PMM listeners out there who have come along on this adventure with us today. And I hope this episode leaves you with inspiration to take with you in the next steps of your own journey.